Hello all, welcome to our legislative forum, and our topic tonight is the environment. I'm Jerry Thornsberry and I serve as the chair of the BlackHawk Soil and Water Conservation District. Bills that we are going to talk about tonight deals with one of the main components that we deal with, soil health. So welcome all, and I would like just to have a session update. Let's take 4 minutes each. And Senator Dotzler, how about if we start with you?
Okay, well, thank you, Jerry. It's good to be at the public forum again. I hope it's informative to our friends in the public and people across Cedar Valley. It's been a couple of weeks, and I'd have to say it's kind of a frustrating couple of weeks. In fact, it's getting tough almost every day to go to the Capitol without walking out of there and feeling bad about some of the things that went on. One of probably the most important thing is because legislators, our biggest responsibility is dealing with our budgets. And I am the ranking member, which means I'm the minority Democrat leader for the economic development budget. And we haven't been meeting at all. Republicans have been doing all their work behind back doors. In fact, there wasn't a single budget, economic development or education budget or healthcare budget meeting held in the Senate. And the Republicans just released the other day, their targets for their budget for the year. And these targets is an overall budget in which all the other budgets are formed. And the overall target is $7.99 billion for FY22. And that is an increase of $195 million. Which is about 2.5% increase. And that doesn't keep up with inflation when you look at where we're at with our budget. In fact, this is $408 million below the expenditure limitation that's set by 99% of revenue that's projected. So according to the Legislative Service Bureau, we could spend more than $400 million on additional projects across Iowa to help with health care, child issues, child care issues, small amounts for economic development, helping with environmental projects, those kind of things. So we know that this is their first shot. Senate, I believe, starts the bills first, and we'll be doing our targets and sending them over to the Iowa House of Representatives. And it's always a back and forth, and I'm sure there'll be some kind of a small increase across the board for that. And Jerry, I got to get you on the chat here so I know how much time I got left. And our timekeeper, Jerry's, I appreciate us keeping on track here. So I saw his face and I decided I better check. So anyway, the other thing that's hitting the news pretty hard, and we'll probably have a little bit of discussion with other legislators, is a bill that has been released, and it's a back and forth bill with the Iowa House, and it does a whole long range of different things, which eliminates the backfill to cities and counties. And that was a deal that was worked out. And I actually was on the committee of three people, Senator Joe Bokum, myself, and Senator Matt McCoy at the time, with working with our leader, Mike Gronstall, and Craig Paulson, who was the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And it was supposed to be etched in stone. And that money is because of the property tax stuff that was occurred some years ago. It was supposed to go to cities and counties, and now they're going to pull that and try to say that they're going to use it for mental health, but there's a lot of problems with that. And I know I'm running out of time, so I'll let my other colleagues, Senator Giddens can probably talk a little bit more about that himself. And thank you for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to discussions.
Thank you, Senator. And let's go to Senator Giddens. Please carry on.
Okay, well, thank you, Jerry. It's good to be with you all. I always enjoy these meetings at the end of the day on a Friday. Nice way to wrap up the week. Visit with constituents and folks across our region. I really am anxious for us to continue to get these vaccinations and eventually be able to meet in person again. I think we've all managed pretty well through all of this. We're pretty resilient and all. I'm very grateful to Sherry and Mike and others for facilitating these Zoom sessions the way we've done it, but I know we're all anxious to get back together in person. So Senator Dotzler did a pretty good job of describing things. He said that we haven't met as budget subcommittees. The senators haven't participated in those so far. You know, that's been a little disappointing. I actually picked up a budget subcommittee this year. I did not have one before this new term. So I was anxious to have that experience and excited, and so far we haven't even met. So I haven't been able to know what that's like yet. I would say overall, it's been interesting in the Senate, at least for us. There seems to have been less activity, I think, than what's going on in the House. One of the things I enjoy about these forums is getting a lot of update from our fellow House members so that we can really hear more about what's going on over there. I know they've put in some really long debates. I was just reading about their debate on Wednesday that went late into the night, after midnight. So, you know, another thing, Senator Dotzler brought up the Ways and Means bill that just happened yesterday, went through Senate Ways and Means Committee. That's the latest big issue, big concern we have. You know, shifting how mental health is funded across the state, if it were to pass in its current form, from a property tax-based system to a state tax system, state-funded system, and somehow that's got to be paid for. As Senator Dotzler said, that's largely going to be paid for by removing the backfill that you know, that was promised to local governments years ago. But there's other very concerning elements to that as well. And interestingly, for the topic tonight, some of them are environmental concerns. Conservation tax credit is one of those, and then we have a credit that's associated with forest reserves as well that would be reduced, that we're very concerned about. So those are just a couple of things that are tucked into the bill, but you know, the shift in how we spend or how we fund mental health has to be paid for somehow out of state budget. And at the end of the day, it's going to be scooped from lots of little places around the code, if that is the form that passes, if it passes in its current form. So lots of concerns there. Otherwise, I'm on Transportation Committee in the Senate. One of the bills we've been really trying to get through for quite some time now, a couple of years, is the hands-free legislation. Public safety community really wants that. They've been lobbying hard for it. I'm very supportive of it. I know Representative Kressig, he's the ranking member of Transportation over in the House. I know they've been following it as well. It seems to be stuck somewhere. We're trying to figure out exactly where. That isn't evident right now, but procedurally, the second funnel date is next Friday. So, you know, bills that haven't made it out of committee and the not the chamber that they originated in, but the other chamber. If they haven't made it out of committee by next Friday, then they would be dead for this session unless they are Ways and Means bills or appropriations bills. So we're going to try to figure that one out here in this next week and hopefully possibly get it to stay alive at least. I saw Jerry said that I'm about out of time, so I do look forward to talking about environmental issues. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. It's what I do professionally at UNI, involved in different networks across the state around environmental issues. So looking forward to the next segment when we can talk about those topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Let's move now to our representative from District 62, Raz Smith.
Hey, I'm sorry about that. My dog is paying me a visit over here and doesn't want to be cooperative today. Thank you all for having us on the call again. I know it's been a wild one in the House this past week. We had a long debate into a charter school bill. I'm really proud of our caucus and the way that we fought through that. But I think it shows that the agenda of the Iowa Republican Party is not in line with Iowans. We believe in our public school system. We always have been big supporters of that, and so to see them pushing that was pretty disheartening, to say the least. As someone who sits on the Ag Committee, some of the things that we've seen come across haven't really addressed a lot of the challenges that Iowa's facing right now. Some of the beginning farmer stuff is great. I think it does move our state forward. I think the stuff with soil health is huge. But I think at the end of the day, we need to really tackle the challenge of making Iowa agriculture climate resistant, and we're not doing that. We haven't taken significant steps towards incentivizing the behavior that we want to see from the ag sector. And when you talk to Iowa farmers, they're willing to do it. We got to make them do it, and we got to incentivize what you want to see. And so for me, I think our challenge is how do we bring new folks into the fold, and how do we frame our ideas in a way that we can get broad buy-in? Buffer zones help everybody, but there's also a tourism portion to that, right? There's a placemaking aspect to conservation and climate protection. And I think we got to really embrace that. But right now, a lot of our Republican peers are not willing to encourage, and are doing the things that can help them get a donor check as opposed to moving our state forward. And I think that's probably one of the themes that we've seen across the board. Whether you're talking to Bob or Eric and what they're saying in the radical Senate, or I'm sorry, Bill and Eric, or myself and Timmy and Dave and Bobby, what we're seeing in the House with legislation that's copied from Minnesota, and they're just rubber stamping it. We see all those things that they're not helping move forward. And then Renata, yes, I did vote for anaerobic digesters. I think for me, right, we have to take every opportunity that we have in the state to move things forward. And while I think there is different schools of beliefs on anaerobic digesters in our state, I think for me, anything that is going to allow us to have a conversation about how we move conservation forward, whether it's enough for us or not, is always going to be one of the things that we question. It's never going to be enough, but we have to do something and move the needle forward. And as of right now, Iowa hasn't done that. We haven't taken any courageous steps. And so I think it's a tool. I think if we want people to use them, right, we have to make it less expensive. But I think at the end of the day, I'm going to take any win that we can. And so if we have the opportunity to sell methane gas off of anaerobic digesters, I'm down for it. I don't know if that lane's going to be there as urgently as some folks think. I think that sector is going to be a little hard to plug into, but I'm all for taking baby steps right now. And hopefully one day soon here, we're in a position of power where we can adequately address the things that we know we need to, and lean on the leadership of Bill and Eric and Dave, who right lead in this sector, and we can really piggyback those efforts. But until then, I'm going to definitely stretch our Republicans to pass things, and I'm hopeful that we don't have CAFO expansion from some of the anaerobic digesters. I know, Renata, that's a challenge for some of our folks, but I'm willing to take a couple steps forward if we can, always.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And now let's move to our representative from District 61, Timmy Brown Powers.
Hi, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. I think our late debates and my early morning shift this morning is starting to catch up with me. We staying up late and getting few hours of rest. And as Roz mentioned, some of these debates have been just contraindicating for what Iowans really need. And what I really can't understand is that some of these bills really are going to affect rural Iowa. And of course, the other representatives who represent those areas, they don't like it when we say that. They get very defensive. But I truly believe that that they are going to affect rural Iowa. And as we drive from here to Des Moines, every week, we can see our rural Iowa just decaying away, and it's really quite sad. And I just don't understand their motive. I am ranking member of Natural Resources, and we did absolutely nothing on environmental, water, or soil this year, and we took no bills up from the Senate for this second funnel. So there's nothing even coming over with a glimpse of any of those concerns. And so that's disappointing as well. I have talked to Representative Bacon in length about, isn't there some other things we can do besides hunting and DNR issues, which are very important. However, they go hand in hand with our environment and our water. And his excuse this session was that, we couldn't have speakers in due to COVID, although we had speakers in other of my committees during COVID, so I'm not sure, but that's the excuse he used. And so we really did not move anything out of that committee that would have been helpful for anything but DNR issues. I am still working with the food bank issue, and I know who's my Ways and Means in the Senate. I'm going to have them start asking every day they have ways is where's that bill? So I had met in length with Representative Hines in the House and said, where's my bill? And he said, well, it's a bipartisan bill in the House. It will feed 1 million Iowans. It has a fiscal note of coming into the budget of $250,000, which is really nothing comparatively down there. And he told me he wasn't going to move until the Senate moved. That very same day, as I was sitting in Ways and Means, I got a text message that the Senate Ways and Means passed out of subcommittee a tax exemption for dance studios, but they didn't do a subcommittee for food banks. So I made an announcement in my Ways and Means and Ways and Means committee and asked all of my folks that and said I respect Representative Hines' call on this. However, due to the Senate Republican leadership, it is clear that we need to take the lead on this. So I asked them all to talk to their senators. Obviously, I'm not concerned about mine, and I also asked them to really consider maybe us moving it in the House first. So I don't know. We're going to keep the pressure up on that, but it would feed 1 million Iowans across Iowa in touching in every single person's district. So for the purpose of not doing that, I don't understand. With Bill, I can concur that the budget, I'm on HHS budget, and we did meet about 6 times and heard some speakers. However, Joel Fry has now gone ghost, and he is working on that budget, and I don't know. So I am sending out an email to him to see if I can sit in and see what he's thinking as far as the budget for HHS. I have 2 major concerns for the MCOs and long-term care providers and child mental health. We have yet to fund it. 2-3 years ago now, we passed a very comprehensive structural bill for child mental health, and we have yet to put our money where our mouth is to assist the regions in funding anything. What I have been told by regions on the board that I serve on is that they are wanting and willing to do those programs. However, they may have to cancel adult mental health programs to provide the child mental health programs. And that is not a solution that I think that we need to go into. I did hear that the Senate has a bill that looking to take away funding to mental health from the counties and move it to the state. That scares me a lot. Because we know that our states are working with the regions to get their funding out there, but we also know how the state has funded schools and the track record there. So that makes me very, very nervous, and that might not be a solution either. How am I doing, Jerry? And so I'm worried about that. Chuck Eisenhower has a couple bills in Ways and Means that do deal with natural resource and soil and solar. I don't anticipate that Representative Heim will pick that up either. He doesn't want to, he's not worried about the water. They're not worried about feeding Iowans. All of that kind of goes hand in hand. But look forward to hearing the conversation tonight. I always enjoy this group and always learn something, and any nugget that I can take back to the Capitol is always appreciated as well. So thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you. And now let's move to our representative from District 59, Bob Kresick. And after he finishes, I'll read a statement that Dave Williams provided, as he could not join us this evening. So Bob.
Okay. Thank you for letting me on and introducing me. I think it was shared already that the process in Des Moines is really bad. The charter bill was a pretty strong indicator of their unwillingness to listen to concepts, ideas, improvements to the bill. We already have the ability for charter schools to come, but their bill creates some pretty unbelievable things to occur. They also passed the gun permit, requiring people to get a permit. And, you know, I'm, like Bill said, he's a gun owner, so am I. But I talked to law enforcement, and their concerns is with the current system that's in place, they could be proactive with interacting with people in the state. Now, because that's going away, they're going to have to be reactive. And I talked to a state trooper late that night at the Capitol, and he says they have some real concerns. And so I know the majority party pretty well claimed that the background checks and everything were going to occur, but in reality, it removes background checks if you buy anything privately. And so we'll have to see. They did, and Dave, I'm sure if Dave was here, he'd talk about it, but they did pass a broadband bill, and it was bipartisan. You know, the community I live, Cedar Falls, we have pretty strong resources for getting on the internet and connecting and doing these types of things, but there are parts of the state that are struggling with that. The felon voting, there was a proposal that went forward. I know that it didn't get everything wanted, but it was a vote that I actually supported it. And I heard some comments from some people that why do we let felons vote? Because they made a mistake in life and they're changing their way, and voting is a way to show that they're part of the community. So I was on a bill in transportation dealing with CDL, which is the licensing process for truck drivers. There's some real issues in the state with getting people access to the testing and the process. And what they're doing is they're moving it from just a small number of locations to include county process. So it had pretty good support from the trucking industry, and it passed. I also worked on a bill, and Roz and I worked together on it a little bit, but it was basically allowing adoptive parents. You know, you adopt a child and you bring them into your home. The transition can be kind of challenging. And so they were going to treat them the same way as, you know, biological parents. I serve on public safety, transportation budget, and commerce. Those are my committees. And I also want to bring forward, I know we're talking about environmental issues, but the bottle bill. I haven't really heard much on that issue at the Capitol, although I know there's some things going on and they want to remove it completely. They also want to eliminate retailers from having to take back, and they want to go to the redemption centers. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds going forward. So thank you, everyone, for being on, and I'll get off.
Thank you, sir. All right, now I'll take a few minutes to read what Dave Williams has written. He has a prior commitment for tonight, and he says he's sorry he won't attend, and that he's especially sorry because environment is a priority for me and a major reason why I wanted to be on the Agricultural Committee. I learned during orientation in 2018 that the majority party pretty well kept as many environmental issues as possible in commerce and ag, so I asked to be on one of those committees. It's not only a passion, I'm glad to use my environmental experience to serve House District 60 and the state. As a member of the 21 Agricultural Committee, I've worked on just 2 environment-related bills this session that I can recall. I'm not on commerce this year, but I've been monitoring utility issues intermittently and haven't heard much about energy conservation, wind, or solar. Bob Kresick is on commerce, so he can correct me if I'm wrong. Representative Eisenhart filed a bill on the solar tax credit that went to Ways and Means. That's about the extent of what I recall about environment activity in the House. I was the lead Democrat on one bill pertaining to changing animal waste treatment to allow for more anaerobic digesters, which are environmentally better than simply collecting the waste and spreading it on fields. The technology has been around since the early 1900s. Renata Sachs shared a paper with me about its early development, and I believe she knew one of the early leaders. With anaerobic digestion, the waste is allowed to decompose in an enclosure without oxygen. It generates methane gas, a greenhouse gas, which is captured and either used on site or piped into utilities' natural gas system. The decomposed waste can be used as garden compost or spread on fields. It has much less odor than current methods. It works best with human and cattle waste. There are a couple of dozen municipal digesters in Iowa and a very few for cattle waste. The limitations are it doesn't work so well with hog and chicken waste. Research unrelated to our legislation continues. The environmental lobby was split on the bill. Some were opposed because it allowed cattle operations to expand in order to make the investment feasible. They don't want to do anything to encourage confined animal operations. Another part of the lobby was in favor because it is a proven green technology and has the potential to help the environment. There were also concerns about tax benefits going to help invest in anaerobic digesters. However, that language was not in the bill. I was in agreement with the environmental groups in favor of digesters because they are helpful and blocking them wouldn't eliminate confined animal feeding operations. Most, if not all, House Republicans voted for the bill. The Democrat caucus was split. The day after the vote, a lobbyist approached me in the rotunda and told me essentially that I was a terrible politician for voting in favor. He told me I was a problem solver, not a politician. I concluded that he was somehow negatively criticizing me. However, it seemed like a compliment anyway. The second bill that might be of interest is House File 801, a bill that broadens soil and water conservation district responsibilities and opens up a new water quality project financing options. I am certain that I, the moderator tonight, can share much more detail for anyone that is interested. Just to show you how things can work, the soil water conservation district language and a definition for the term soil health was part of an amendment that completely changed the original bill. Right now, I can't remember the original bill address, but it was these two topics. We passed the bill out of the Ag Committee. Stating a definition for soil health is important because it also opens us up to federal funding option. The bill defines soil health as the continuing capacity of soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants and animals and humans. Does that sound controversial to you? Apparently, the folks in the majority party don't like it because there's a rumor that this bill won't make it to the floor for a vote. I was part of a soil health working group during the interim between 2020 and 21 sessions. There were 2 or 3 environmental lobbyists in the group, and it could be that the skeptics in the majority party think that lobbyists have something up their figurative sleeves. Thank you to the team that makes the forum possible, and I'm sorry I couldn't attend in person. I hope everyone has a good weekend and is continuing to manage COVID. Dave Williams. So, given that we ended on the House File 801, I would like to open it up, and I don't know which one of you is best able to speak about this House File, Soil Health and Soil Water Conservation Policy. But let me just give you from what I know from my perspective, and that is that if a state does not have in their code a definition for soil health, that state will be in jeopardy in getting federal funding for the different programs that come down from the Department of Ag at the federal government. In fact, there was a representative from Maine that introduced a bill that said just that. And what that means in practical terms for many of our farmers is that they won't get a discount on their crop insurance. So I have no understanding why this has become controversial other than Sierra Club supported it. And the Farmers Union thought there was something untoward going on. But my goodness, the greatest asset we have here in Iowa is our gorgeous soil. And why wouldn't we want to continue to have that as a living organism that would produce more crops without all the chemical additives? So maybe Representative Smith, you might be able to speak more about that because of how you introduced your topics tonight.
Well, yeah, and Dave and I had a lot of conversation about this. I sit on the Ag Committee as well. And understanding the current administration that we're going to have, there's going to be lots of opportunities for us to partner and utilize federal dollars to improve soil health. I mean, Iowa has to stay current with the trends. And sometimes, right, we knew 10 years ago, we would have said water quality is the catchphrase that we need to have in code to make sure that we're up to date to partner with federal regulations. But right now, soil health is, I think, a more appropriate term when we're talking about what's happening here with edge of field practices, the erosion that's taking place, the fact that you can drive down Highway 20, see how many farmers have tilled already, and then we get heavy rains, and I'm thinking you're washing away thousands of dollars in topsoil, right? Because on our farm we keep the alfalfa up until it's time to cut it down and bale it, because we understand what that does for nitrogen reduction, but also the fact that water runs slower when you have something there to obstruct it. It's a basic principle. But it's been such a practice for a long time that when we add definitions like soil health into code, it allows us, one, to partner with our university, especially ISU, talk about the research. I'm sure Eric is going to stay busy on some of this stuff in the interim, because this allows grant programs like his to really get more dollars from the federal government across the country. So I know it's a good vote. Obviously, it wasn't all we wanted. People are always fearful of what they don't understand, and unfortunately, in our state, we haven't done a good job of informing the ag sector about what's good for them, but also talk about incentivizing that behavior. It's always been easier for them to lose money on crops and get a federal subsidy, and we've got to flip that on its head. We got to make agriculture more climate resistant and have the secondary be getting some of these federal dollars, because there's no pride for our farmers in being paid a check for no crops. They don't believe in that. And soil health is I think, for me, is that nugget that we can use to bring them to the table to have the conversation. For us, it's about conservation. For them, it's about sustainability and longevity of their operation. They go hand in hand, in our opinion. And as a member of the minority party, our goal is to mine those things that allow us to insert our ideas into majority party politics and policies to make sure we can do the best we can to represent for our districts and our constituents. And so soil health in this instance was that nugget that we utilized to get in there, and they dropped everything else, but we kept that thing that we know is helpful, and hopefully that can pass both chambers and become law.
Thank you. Senator Giddens, how about if you speak about what you know about the different environmental bills that are making their way forward?
Sorry, that mute button always eludes me. So thank you to Ross for describing what's going on over in the House. Like I said earlier, it's things that haven't flowed our way yet. It's great to have an update on those things before they hit us. And I haven't been tracking that bill yet. So I did want to share some things. I am a part of the a statewide network that does, different organizations and agencies that are involved in clean energy and climate work in different ways. So that's what environmentally, that's kind of what I'm most closely involved in professionally. And one nice thing is that some of the groups track state legislation, and we get to have those conversations regularly. The Iowa Environmental Council is one group that I value highly, and they have a couple of different program tracks. One of them is about water issues, and the other one is energy and climate issues. So actually was on 2 different phone calls with them today, and so kind of got the freshest, most current concerns that they have, and they align with my concerns as well. One of them is a bill that has, it's in the House and the Senate. House File 555 in the House, Senate File 455 over in the Senate. And they have, the Iowa Environmental Council folks have dubbed it the Methane and Propane Gas Protection Bill. So it's a bill that essentially is being pushed by the quote-unquote natural gas industry, and that would include methane and propane, to try to protect the use of those fossil fuels in our communities. It basically would make it illegal for local governments to enact any sort of policies at the local level that would curtail the use of natural gas, within those jurisdictions, those local jurisdictions. So, the problem with this, it may not be readily apparent to folks, but one of the big issues with this is that we need to get off of fossil fuels, and we know that we have done a really good job of moving towards renewable electricity. We drive across the state and we see windmills everywhere. We're producing tons of renewable electricity, and the trend is headed in that direction where we actually believe we have a good, strong path to 100% renewable electricity to kind of meet our climate goals on the electricity front. But natural gas is a much tougher nut to crack. That is a fossil fuel. We currently, actually, we produce a fair amount of electricity with it. So, but that'll continue to go away as we accelerate that renewable energy transition. The problem is with our infrastructure where we heat our homes and we cook, we heat our water with natural gas. So that, just imagine in all of our Midwestern communities, the infrastructure in place for us to heat our homes and heat our water and and cook with natural gas. In order for us to fully get off of natural gas, we have to transition all of that infrastructure. It's a massive, massive issue. So, you know, some cities and other places in other states have done innovative programs to, you know, incentivize whenever there's new development that it not include natural gas hookups, that it's all electric, basically. And that's what this bill is getting at. It's saying that, you know, local governments can't do that kind of thing. They have to not go down the path in any way of curtailing the use of natural gas within a community. So it's a long explanation, but that's the issue. We would be, I speak for myself, I guess I'm really concerned about that legislation. I think that that's the wrong path to go down when we know that we have big climate goals that we need to achieve. So that is likely the top concern. I guess I'd say that is the top concern on the environmental community, the energy and climate community in Iowa's minds right now. There is a positive thing that I'd like to mention too, to try to kind of balance it out. And I'm sure that maybe Representative Kressig on Commerce Committee over in the House might have something to say about this. It is the solar tax issue. And so we had a really good solar bill that passed last year before the session was disrupted due to COVID. Provided a framework for more certainty in the development of the solar industry in the state, and for a system called net metering, which is the foundation for how a distributed renewable energy owner, in other words, somebody who has rooftop solar, a business or a homeowner or so forth, will get compensated through the utility for the overproduction that they produce in solar. And that's kind of what makes a solar project work. So we did that last year. That was a really great, strong bipartisan thing. The next step is to continue to further incentivize for solar development through the tax credit system. And so we have good tax credit incentives right now. The problem is it needs to be extended. So there are three key components. One of them is that currently our state tax credit is tied to our federal tax credit. So, you know, if something changes with the federal tax credit, if it goes down, then our state tax credit is going to go down commensurately. So we want to decouple those so that we're not we're not tied to what happens with the federal tax credit. That's the first part of solar legislation that's moving through the House. We haven't seen anything in the Senate yet. And then we'd like to expand just the pool of available tax credit money, double that. It's currently $5 million a year. We'd like to double it to $10 million. There has been tons and tons of demand. In fact, it's oversubscribed. People can put in a system now and utilize the tax credit, but if the available pool of money runs out for that current year, then they're put on a wait list, and they have to wait until the following year to get reimbursed for that system that they were qualified for. So another piece to it would be, let's use some one-time money right now to pay down the current wait list, to get rid of that wait list, pay everybody off who's waiting to get paid, and then let's double the pool of tax credit money from 5 million to 10 million, so that we've got enough to try to cover the demand that we see every year moving forward. So those, and I'm already out of time. I'm not doing a good job of summarizing these things well enough to get through other issues. But I'd say the natural gas issue is a big concern. Solar bill is a good thing. If we can get that moving and get that done, that would be really wonderful. Maybe I did have a couple other things, but maybe in other segments we'll have time to address those later. So thank you all.
Thank you. Mr. Kresick, how about if you follow up with what Senator Giddens was talking about from your Commerce Department's information you can share?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, Jerry. The process, from what I was not assigned to that bill, and in my memory, I don't remember us doing it yet, but I did see some info on it, and Jared Klein is the drafter of that legislation. I think solar in general has some support in the Republican caucus to do something with that. I know that there's several farmers that are in office, and Jared Klein is one of them, and they use a significant amount of solar for their CAFOs, their combined animal feeding operations. So, we'll have to see what they decide. But, the biggest challenge is, I think, how state monies flow into people to invest in solar. And what I've seen over the years is those dollars just dry up quickly because there isn't adequate funding for it to grow and increase. So, the governor is getting some federal dollars. I think it's $1.25 billion that I would think she'd be able to apply some of those dollars to growing solar in the state, but we'll have to see. She has complete authority. I think we gave that to her last session on spending, and she still has it. They haven't gone in to challenge her on her spending. So that's kind of my observation. Timmy or Roz, they may have some more, but that's kind of where it's at right now. It seems like the bills that we're being asked about, the only way we find out about it is when they actually run it in committee or when we run it on the floor. I mean, it's literally, we're not included in the conversation.
Representative Kresick, do you have other comments about the environment? I just didn't mean to focus you on the solar credit.
Well, I mean, I know I briefly touched on the bottle bill. If you look at that, that's a significant role in making sure our roadways and our grasslands and others are clean and not, and that's another bill. I don't know, maybe some others have some comments in the Senate or the House. I know the Senate is going forward with some proposals that, I think in reality, well, if you look at Waterloo and Cedar Falls, there's two recycling centers in the community. One in Waterloo, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I was told, and then there's the one in Cedar Falls out of University. And I've just heard people are very frustrated with the wait time to return those cans and bottles in there. And, I think Hy-Vee is really about the only, well, Walgreens is taking them, but Fairway isn't. None of your convenience stores in reality are accepting those. And so that's a big issue. As far as the soil, I have had an opportunity to tour some fields where farmers have applied cover crops. They put in, and Jerry, you probably, I think maybe I was on a tour that you were involved with by Dyke. It's been a couple of years ago, but farmers are starting to see that. I think the reality of it is they want the state to have some incentive to do it. But the incentive is the soil quality. I mean, if you look at our soil quality, it's pretty high standards here in Iowa. And here's another one. We actually have a geologist department at the state, but they have cut that budget so significantly. And there's fewer and fewer people actually able to do things. Western Iowa, they're having some real issues with water because things are drying up out there. And they are the ones that, if they had more resources from the state to begin to look at the underneath, the soil down below, that they could make recommendations and ways for us to improve it. But again, we're not doing anything with improving their budget so they could have more staff. So that's the frustration for me. It seems like, water is such a vital resource for us to live. And hopefully we can begin to attack those issues, if not this year, next year. And my request to everyone is to continue to advocate for those issues.
Thank you. And before we move to you, Senator Dotzler, I just wanted to say that the picture behind me is a soybean field with cover crops on it. And we have a Miller Creek project south of the county, and 20% of the fields, the crop fields, are in cover crops. The state average is 3.5%. So we're doing a heck of a job here in BlackHawk, and we should be very proud of that. And so, Senator Dotzler, what can you say to us about environment?
Well, thank you, Jerry. That was cool. I was going to ask you about the background. I've seen a little rainbow there, and it's just, that means the sun's coming out. It'd be nice to see the sun for a change. I'm kind of missing that. I forgot what it looked like. But let me say a couple of things. First of all, I haven't served on the Natural Resources Committee since I was in the Iowa House, so that's been a while. I have a degree in biology at UNI, and I'm very proud of my background in dealing with conservation of Iowa resources and the work I did before I was in the legislature in environmental education in the schools. And I was fortunate enough to be chosen as one of the top environmental educators here in the United States through the Roger Troy Peterson Institute, who wrote the bird books. And so I did an earthworks program through Hartman Reserve Nature Center to all the grade schools and tried to get kids in recycling and did projects. So I miss that because when I went to the Iowa Senate, the Natural Resources Committee met at the same time as the business and labor and the economic development stuff. And really our environment is economic development. Our rivers and streams and lakes are very important for recreational opportunities, which are attractive to young professionals. And I live on the Cedar River. I'm at my mother's house, so on the weekends I help take care of Mom. She keeps me in line too. So I'm in her kitchen right now, but if I was home, I went and walked down and checked the river levels. I look at the water quality all the time, and it has slightly improved. We're still, when heavy rain events, we see more turbidity. I did notice just before we started seeing the ground from thawing out, the river's really clear and it's low. And the canaries in the mines were there. There were still some mussels, and the raccoons get them at low level times. So I'm out there checking the river, but I'm going to tell you, people really enjoy canoeing in Blackhawk County, and that's a big plus to try to recruit people. And it was said earlier, Eric said something about, about how we got to get off of fossil fuels because what's going on with our environment is in a real crisis. and it can affect agriculture in ways where our friends in the agricultural world aren't paying a lot of attention to. And I remember back early on in the Senate, we had a debate about climate change and global warming, and you don't want to use that term because when you're in the middle of a Arctic vortex, it's hard to convince people that things are really getting warm. But some of the things are very troubling that's going on right now. We have what they're calling high pressure zones in the Pacific and in the Atlantic, which is because of the glaciers melting, this cold air is coming down, and that's cooling the atmosphere and causing a block for moisture. And we are probably quite possibly heading towards what they call, a real drought and of mega proportions. And they're already seeing it in the western parts of the United States. And our crops could be wiped out in 1 year very easily. So we've got to really pay attention to it. So the work that's being done on the solar stuff that Ross talked about and Eric and those tax incentives are so important. The wind energy is great. I think we're probably still going to have some of the natural gas stuff. And I voted for the anaerobic digesters too. And one of the real concerns and criticisms was that it's going to force, because of the real cost to put them in, they're very expensive. And you really got to have a big herd of animals, cattle, basically to make that work. And it's going to shove out the small farmers. And, I'm not so sure about that. I think that the benefits from those can be very positive. The other thing is I've helped fund through the economic development budgets, and the legislature helps fund the research at our Regents universities. And Iowa State has been doing for some time the use of waste. And, I see Renata was chatting to people and letting us know that the waste products are equal to 193 million people, yet we only have 3 million people here, 3.1 million in Iowa. That's a real eye-opener. But they're looking at ways of using that. And because the human waste is so high in carbon content, and there are all kinds of chemicals and things that could be beneficial to them. So if you got an anaerobic digester and you got a high concentration of waste, it would be easier to take that and create some other industries off of it. So I'm thinking that the chemistry and the science research that's going on, there could be some long-range benefits down the road for that. It is also important. It's also important that we still use a lot of that waste in our soils, and because it's slower to break down on nitrogen, instead of adding this nitrogen that's runs off right away. And as far as the stuff that's going on and learning about sustainable agriculture, it's unfortunate that they don't want to hear about it. And it wasn't that many years ago in the budgets, they really cut the resources that went to the Leopold Center. And the Leopold Center did so much research on how to help, with the sustainable agriculture. And Representative Kresick and I, before the COVID stuff, we used to occasionally, when they had meetings with the Cedar Valley watershed, we would go there and listen to progressive farmers who actually showed that using cover crops, no-till systems, they were actually more profitable in the long run, and they weren't having to buy, high nitrogen concentrations for their fields. Technology is also stepping up because companies like Deere & Company are doing research on how they can actually sample the soil as they go with the equipment and take readings of the nitrogen and change the amount of nitrogen depending about how much is retained in the soil and how much is needed. So there's a lot that's can be done with technology. And what our Republican friends don't understand is when they're not doing stuff to take care of rivers and streams, those young students are wanting to go to places where they can have a quality of life, quality of place initiatives that they want to live at. And those are the same people that we need to do this research at our Regents universities to help our environment. So I'm going to tell you, it's very frustrating. And one last thing I want to talk about, Cedar Falls, and I only got a few seconds, but I want to talk about Cedar Falls high school students a couple years ago did research on cancer in rural schools. And what they found out is there's a higher percentage of children in rural schools are getting cancer, higher than urban areas. And it's coming from pesticide drifts. And there is no standards in Iowa about spraying herbicides and pesticides with wind. So there was a bill through the Senate that came up, and it really talked about being really qualified to deal with some of this stuff and applications. And I got up and told that stories and asked for an amendment, and they just turned their backs on it. Here it's their rural schools, their kids, and they refuse to even listen, and it's very frustrating. So for not going to say anything about the environment, I'm full of it. And I'm not talking about stuff that needs to be anaerobically digested either. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And to bridge before I go to you, Representative Brown Powers, is that when you speak of the drought that's in the western part of Iowa, if we concentrated on creating, making our soil health more robust, it would hold water. And when we get these major rain events, it would soak in the water and not run off. It's just like, it's so simple. I don't know why we don't get it. Anyway, Representative Tammy Brown Powers, please.
Thank you, Jerry. So I'm going to follow where Senator Dotzler left off with that study from Cedar Falls students, because that was a magnificent study. And I work with cancer patients at cancer rehab for Mercy One. And I can tell you one of the other things that we found a few years ago was we had high concentration of farmers or their family members in rural Iowa. And again, they were from the pesticides. So many of them started off being, prostate cancer, lung cancers. And we have areas, I still have my map at the office where we have areas where those folks, we have really high concentration just east here of BlackHawk County, and we could go down one road, and they had a member in every single house who had at least one member that had some sort of cancer, and so it is a huge problem. I'll circle back to what Bob was talking with the bottle bill. There's been so much talk about it behind closed doors, because I don't know that any of us have been involved in that conversation. However, so in my district, one of the frustrations is Casey's and Hy-Vee, they have big lobbyists buying, to shut it down. They don't want to take the cans. However, in my district, my neighborhood grocery store, she's taking these cans at the same place where she's checking customers out, and she's following the rules and the guidelines, and she's frustrated. So she would like us to find, she wants to continue to take them, but she would like us to find a way that maybe we can get those cans out of our ditches, out of our streets, but make everybody play by the same rules. And I know Waverly had some initiatives that Bob got to visit a couple of years ago, but I don't think that ever really made any significant gains. And Jerry, you were talking about your background, and it got me thinking. It has been, I think, 4 years now since we have. I don't know if Roz was in with us yet when we used to do some big tours in our rural areas and look at cover crops and no-till and talk to some of those, farmers who are trying so hard to do the right thing. Mike Hemming, just in Orange County or in Orange here, he is a huge advocate of that as well. And so maybe we need to, it's a lot of work, Jerry, but maybe we need to get together and host up here and show off what, our folks are doing Maybe once we get through this summer, we can do something like that, and get these legislators to come up here and really look at that and what's happening. Because I think, we passed a bill in the House, and I don't, hopefully it'll move forward, but it was to increase, encourage people young people to farm, and which is what we want them to, but I think we want to show them, good things that they can be doing. So anyway, I would love to, if we want to at some point, Jerry, I would sit on that committee with you and help round the troops and do that, because I think that would be something to do. Another thing that I always think about, and now even more now that I'm on natural resources, is I would love to work with our local folks and introduce some bills next year from Blackhawk County. It went in around natural resources, water, soil health. But I would love, I don't know. I mean, I don't have that knowledge. I'm healthcare, but I know we all connect, because I'm taking care of cancer patients because they're, because of the environment. So I would love to get together and maybe we introduce a package in the Senate and the House from Blackhawk County on these subjects, and we all sign on to that and try to kind of push that button. We can't do a lot because we're so minority, but we most certainly could have conversations and start educating and start, even though we are primarily urban people, but really kind of start showing that we want to start pushing this kind of legislation. So again, that is just an idea that as we all talk, I think there's some great strengths, and I know we have huge strengths here in Blackhawk County, Jerry, that you work with, that I think we should get some legislation started and really just kind of start that conversation. The one thing too on natural resources with my DNR folks, they have some huge concerns right now. One is we lost a lot of trees during the derecho show, and so they've got that concern, and they're real concerned about the funding going forward and the maintenance of the parks, because COVID introduced Iowans to the parks again, state and county parks, but there is a huge amount of maintenance, like anything. If we aren't doing our maintenance, aren't doing our due diligence, things kind of fall apart. And with the lack of doing our maintenance from years, because those budgets have been cut and been cut and been cut, and now with the derecho show going through Iowa, they have big concerns about getting the parks, our state and county parks, back up for all these visitors, because now that Iowans have rediscovered our hidden beauties, they're concerned that now they can't take care of all the people coming to the parks. We took our RV out the other day to have some maintenance, and they selling 100 RVs a day here in Blackhawk County. So people are wanting to get out, and we've got to make sure that we're doing what we can with our DNR to help make sure that we have our parks in the condition that they need to be in. So anyway, just a couple ideas that I would love to work with this group on going forward. And I know Bill had his hands up, so he wanted to say something and echo back at me. And Jerry, I would love to, after this summer, maybe get together and have all of us, and Eric, and draft some legislation and just start the damn conversation.
I didn't have my hand up. I was giving you a thumbs up. Good ideas.
Yeah, and to build on that is that we in Blackhawk at the Soil and Water District are very fortunate, because we have an urban project that is Dry Run Creek, Cedar Falls, and we have rural, which is Miller Creek and Rock Creek, that are doing some really wonderful things. So we have a story to tell, and I love that idea. We'll be in touch. Now, you know what? I want to circle back to Senator Giddens and let you finish on the environmental things you wanted to speak about.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
I know we have Roz on yet too.
Roz
is
speak?
still on.
Pardon?
Roz is still on too.
Yeah, he's next.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know.
Thank you.
Has Ross spoken yet on this segment? I'm sorry if you.
Yeah, he has.
Okay. Okay. Well, a lot of the things actually did come up. I guess one other big thing I'll note right now, just real quick, is that Representative Kresick did mention the defunding over the years of the state geologist. You know, that's the geologist does a lot of groundwater research, and that's just very important work for the public good across the state of Iowa. Senator Dotzler mentioned the defunding of the Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture, and I'll note that when that happened, a lot of that money was shifted to what's called the Iowa Nutrient Research Center. You know, and that is a center that essentially makes grants to different research projects at our Regents universities. We were on a very interesting call the other day with Larry Weber, who is one of the co-founders of the Iowa Flood Center. He also is a co-founder of the Iowa Nutrient Research Center that I just mentioned. And, you know, he admitted that he didn't say all, but he said most of the projects that the Iowa Nutrient Research Center funds are not going to have a measurable impact on solving our nutrient problems here in the state of Iowa. What we really needed was the Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture and the types of projects that it did. So that redirection of that money was a big problem, you know, and it's now just being used for projects that are essentially not helping us at all solve this problem. So that's an thing. We have another center, a university-based center, the Iowa Flood Center. I mentioned that Larry Weber is one of the co-founders of that center. The Iowa Flood, you know, in all of these conversations we've had so far, we haven't talked about water quantity or our flooding issues, which really are, you know, climate resilience. So that's what that's all about. Is we've already started to experience climate change. We need to be doing all we can to try to put the brakes on that, to stop burning fossil fuels, to keep from contributing to that problem any longer. But we also know that we're experiencing the impacts of climate change right now, and that's going to continue to happen for the foreseeable future. Even if we completely quit burning fossil fuels right now, we're going to continue to have flooding and polar vortices and wildfires in the West, and all of these things are going to continue to happen. So we need to build a more resilient, environment here to kind of weather the impacts that we know we're going to have. And flooding is our issue, our main issue here in Iowa, right? So the Flood Center was established and has really done tremendous work in helping us try to develop a more resilient, landscape in the state of Iowa to handle these flooding events. It has relied largely on federal funding. They got a $97 million grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development several years ago, which funded a project called the Iowa Watershed Approach, which is a really innovative approach of looking at the state in watershed areas and trying to develop conservation practices on the landscape that will help us keep that water from running off, hold it on the land, get it to run down into the ground. That funding has now ended. I was actually involved in a project when I worked at the Tallgrass Prairie Center at UNI that was associated with the Iowa Watershed Approach. So I kind of got to know that group through that process. And it's crazy that it's coming to an end, but it is. And so we need the state to step up and support these centers. They've made the case at the Iowa Flood Center that they're doing incredible work, and that federal money is coming to an end. We need to reappropriate state money to help these centers. Also, Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture, the state geologists, other entities. I'm not asking for money personally, but I work at an environmental center at UNI that true shoestring. You know, we do really good work, but we don't really we don't really get state funding to help that. So that's one big thing I think I'd like to point out, is the support for these centers at our universities. And I've rambled again. That maybe I'll leave it at that right now. Those are just money issues, and you know, whoever said, show me your budget and I'll tell you what your priorities are, I think that's the truth. You know, where we put our money is really, it does express our priorities. And so we're at the point in the session right now where we're starting to deal with budget. We could change course and make a meaningful impact in the state. We have the resources to do it. We just need the political will. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Representative Smith, please add to our conversation.
Yeah, I think I may have let us off with some of these things, but I want to kind of get back to, I saw one of Roger's questions about, you know, how do we educate the majority party, but they have to be open to be open learners. We're talking about changing human behavior. And so I think we have to understand that's what we're starting at. And that's a difficult task. How many of you have tried to like live left-handed or right-handed if that's not your typical mode of operation? That's a significant change that we're asking people to make. And so we can't underscore what that takes and how important that is that we check off all those boxes and incentivizing the behavior we want to see. And I think it's fairly fresh to me because I have a 4-year-old, and we're not doing pull-ups anymore. But the way I incentivize that behavior, right, is different. But that same methodology of starting from a place of growth, you get what you permit. And right now we've permitted a lot of these bad practices as a state, and that's just the reality. And so if that's all a lot of our folks in the ag sector know, it doesn't matter how much information we throw at them. We have not incentivized a change in behavior. We have a lot of farmers who are actually doing some of these things, and they don't get highlighted, but we need to highlight the difference between the folks at the Farm Bureau who say one thing and the folks like Dustin Sage in Dunkerton, who's a member of the Farm Bureau locally, but who's planting organic crops right here in BlackHawk County. Those are conversations that we have to highlight and accentuate so that we can show the difference in between what the overall organization is saying at the State House and how they're stomping and trouncing heavy over all of our progress, and how we have folks on a local level who are actually making these gains, but it's behind, right, I guess would be quote unquote closed doors. And so we have to incentivize the behavior that we want to see from a state level, but also there's going to be $4 billion from the American Rescue Act coming into this state, right? That's half of our state budget. The governor is going to spend about $150 million of that on broadband infrastructure. How do we highlight the lack of investment into water quality, soil health, making climate resistant communities? How do we highlight that she's not going to be investing in those things? And that's our job, to show how we'd spend that money differently, how we would invest in things that are important to us. You know, when I think about the work that's ahead of us, we have to be a little bit different, in my opinion, as Democrats, as opposed to saying no to things that we don't like. We have to be solution oriented as well. The fact of the matter is, we make no progress in the minority party without finding our ways to input amendments that make legislation better, by finding opportunities and little gaps in the door where we can make gains. And so while we can talk about policies that want to ban certain things or vote no on certain things, if we get nothing for our efforts, at the end of the day, we've gained nothing for our efforts. And so I can't be a part of a solution that doesn't exist. And so we have to challenge ourselves to be broader thinkers, because I think we've kind of stuck ourselves in this rut where it's all or nothing. That's not our option though, folks. We don't get all or nothing. We get what they give us, or we make it better in some instances. And sometimes we're not going to quote unquote polish a turd, as we call it in the State House. Sometimes we're not going to put in the work with something that we categorically and values wise don't agree with. But when there's opportunities for us to make some stuff better, that is our commitment and our obligation to the people of Iowa, especially you as our constituents. And we take that seriously. And so, you know, I'm okay with us having different opinions on what an anaerobic digester is, or a different opinion on what a CAFA moratorium means. I'm okay with that disagreement. What I'm not okay with though is us having an all or nothing mindset. Because in 2021, we're still here having these same conversations that Roger and Renata, you're probably having long before I joined the legislature, right? And we haven't made a whole lot of gains. And for me, I wasn't elected to get there and just be a no vote, right? I want to make some progress and make some gains. And so for me, we have to challenge the status quo, understanding that we're getting what we permit, be solutions oriented, and find allies in these things. And we have partners in the farmers union. We have farmers in rural counties who are actually making these gains, and they're going to be silenced by the Farm Bureau. And if as Democrats we don't have their backs, they're going to be on an island and not doing these things anymore. And so we have to think differently about our work and engage people that we typically would not bring into the fold. Let them know there is support for the small gains they're making, and keep pushing it forward, because right, my daughter's got to live in this world, and the predictions show that by the time they're my age, I was going to be dang near a swamp. And as a loving father and husband, I'm not down for that. And so we have to be bigger than we've been and stand up for what's right. And you know, I think I challenge all of us to engage in that process and engage in operating a little bit differently in the things that we're seeing being done at the Capitol.
Thank you, my goodness. And something that we use a lot at the Soil and Water Conservation District is funding through REAP to do conservation practices. And I wonder if I might ask you, Roger White, to ask questions, speak about REAP, because it's a really important funding stream for Iowa and for Blackhawk County especially.
Yes, I can. This is Roger White. I think everybody knows me. REAP was created back in the late 80s, and in the late 90s, it was actually put into the code by the legislature that it would be funded at $20 million a year. If you applied the cost of living to that $20 million, it should be well over $30 million by now. It has never, since that date, ever achieved that. Most recently, it's been 12. I think that's what the governor has in her budget for the next fiscal year, another 12. Which is about a third of what's needed. So I guess the question I have is, will there be any opportunity to increase REAP up to what the statute says it's supposed to be? And then also it's going to expire in another year. Will there be a continuation, since we don't see any movement on the Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, which could replace REAP?
Oh, Roger, I'm just going to say, I just, before I left the Capitol this week, I talked to one of the budget chairs, and they said, really, they're going to be pretty much just a status quo budget, and they're going to hold to that. And I was pushing for some more money to try to help with some of the STEM initiatives, and we're still trying to work on some of that, but I suspect that that'd be extremely difficult to get any kind of increase in funding, which is tragic because we got $400 million of revenue that's actually going to come in, and underneath the 99% spending limitation. So there's a lot of money there we could do a lot of good with real easily.
Oh, my goodness. I'm going to open it up to questions. What questions have you for our legislators?
I was trying to get on that REAP question. And, you know, I've gone to several the REAP meetings that occur here in Blackhawk County. And the biggest thing that I see there, it's a very diverse group of people politically that come to those. And what I'm saying is they're Republican and Democrat. And what we're seeing is some of our small rural communities in Blackhawk County are, you know, trying to upgrade their park, trying to maybe consider trail system, many of those things. And I don't know if those folks are going forward to reach out to their legislator, but I think it's a critical thing. I've seen the value of REAP. It's a major plus to the state. So I just wanted to add that if I could. I'm sorry.
No, appreciate that. It doesn't look like we have any questions pending, so I'm going to open it up. What else would you legislators like to share with us? Or maybe Renata, EJ, others would like to speak? Renata, you're on mute.
Whoever's the host.
I found it. Thank you.
Great.
Sorry, I'm
You're
an idiot.
next.
But anyway, I just would like to say to all of our legislators something about the anaerobic digesters. The digesters in themselves are actually a good thing. It's a good technology. It's a good possibility for use of making gas and heating our houses and all these sort of things. But our baseline issue is we cannot afford more CAFOs in Iowa. We have such a huge amount of confined animal feeding operations of all sorts that it's very, very detrimental to the state. And even if you go through the digesters with all their waste, the waste still contains nitrates and phosphorus by the thousands of pounds. And I'm sorry, I don't have it at the top of my head right now, but I'll send it to you. It's atrocious, and we cannot afford to absorb that. And we can't afford any more expansion of CAFOs and additional CAFOs. We need to do something about that. And that's why some people wanted a moratorium, and a moratorium has been poo-pooed and blown down the road, and it didn't happen. But we need to do something about that. Digesters will not solve that problem. And our soil and water will still be full of nitrates and phosphorus. So no good. And what else? The other thing I'm very concerned about is, and I love what Jerry and her outfit are doing. I have gone to see it myself, and I know all the people involved, and they're super wonderful doing their skilled research and their skilled application of all that's possible to cure the ills of our soils and water, but it's not enough. We cannot have that happen only voluntarily in the state, because the largest contributors to the rottenness of our water and soil are big guys who do not do any of those things. And somebody who knows all the details about that is Art Cullen, the editor of the Storm Lake Times. He's a wonderful, wonderful, knowledgeable God in Iowa about agriculture and politics and all what goes with it. So there we need to do something too. It cannot only happen voluntarily. It's not enough. And so what else shall I say? I don't know. Lots and lots of problems we have, and the bottle bill is ridiculous that we want to do away with a good thing we have going. And we need, I have been writing like crazy to all these legislators, to every one of them, not only to our legislators who are doing for the most part the right thing all the time, and I love you all, but all the others who are having totally different mindsets. Thank you.
Renata. Representative Smith, I'll get you EJ next.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, no, I think, Renata, I think you speak to some of the issues that we're seeing is that when we communicate with our folks in some of these rural communities where CAFOs are really a problem, we're talking to the folks that live right down those rural roads, but what we're having trouble tracking down and challenging is the farmer who lives in the millionaire who lives in Florida who owns 2,000 acres in Grundy County, and they are not held accountable to their neighbors and peers because they're not a neighbor in our community. And so we've allowed our state to be the most terraformed, like one of the most terraformed in the nation, and no accountability locally for these folks. And we have to first shrink that problem. But secondly, we have to, you know, when Bob talked about, or Representative Kresick talked about the coalition that comes from REAP, that's indicative that this is an issue that broadly supported and being solved by Iowans. But the voices that have the dollars and the donors that have the dollars are speaking quite a bit louder than the populace. And so we have to figure out how we amplify the majority of Iowa voices and allow each other to hold those few folks, right, those bad actors accountable for those practices. You know, on our farm, we're surrounded by corporate farms on either side. And I can tell you, come harvest time, I've never seen so many. I mean, they'll have a dozen semis line the road, another half a dozen combines, right? We're talking about a $5 to $6 million operation that's there. And it's, I mean, going over hundreds of acres overnight. You can wake up and literally see all the corn still up. And by the next morning, it's all down and our yard is filled with pheasant, which I don't mind that portion of it. But at the end of the day, we don't know, right, who's paying for all that to be done. And so we have to make sure we're taking ownership of our space, but building that coalition of people who are Democrat, Republican, Independent, who want to see something change. And when we talk about a K4 moratorium, my biggest issue with this, a moratorium means the conversation is over with. And as a member of the minority party, I don't have the benefit to stop the conversation because I want to get something done.
True.
And so when we say it's moratorium or nothing, Republicans are going to say, okay, nothing, right? Because they don't want it anyway. So we have to be able to bring something to the table. Ideally, right, I would like to see a 5-year phase in where we no longer expand CAFOs in this state and we actually are developing a plan. But it's hard for me to support something when we have no alternative besides just no. Democrats will continue to lose elections if we're just going to be the party of naysayers. And I think all of us in Blackhawk County are all about being solutions oriented, because as much as they say we are democratic spaces, that's because we have relationships with people that live here to be able to dive into some of these difficult conversations without fear. And so we need your support in pointing us to the folks that we can use as examples who are doing some of this good work, who are on these Farm Bureau calls and who are upset that their voices are being silenced as well. Because I think we all feel that pressure at the Capitol when we make big gains and we get Republican buy-in, and Matt from the Farm Bureau can pop up, and at the end of the day, he's killed the bill because the Farm Bureau said no, and we thought we had bipartisan support. And that's kind of the reality of our day-to-day sometimes.
EJ Gallagher?
Yeah, I watched President Biden's news conference the other day, and he was asked whether or not he was going to run, and he said he probably would again. I'm just wondering where I'm happy with everybody that's here, and I realize not all of you are up, and I also realize we've got reapportionment to deal with, and considering how close some of the districts are, it could be some interesting things that could come up, which I don't hope would come up, you know, as far as primaries. But I'm just wondering if people have decided where they are yet. And then one other question is if anybody has a consensus on when you're going to get done this spring.
I bet Senator Dotzler has an opinion.
Well, of course I do. Well, first of all, there's a war going between the House and the Senate. So with bills, I think the House sent over 80 or 90 bills, and I only recall working on a handful of them. Some of those are bills that they have both in both chambers, so they're flipping them back and forth. So this last bill that was just published, and we didn't talk about it, all the negative stuff in the Ways and Means Committee that gets rid of the backfill. It also did stuff with the Forest Reserve, right, and also did something with the charitable donations of private land, which is terrible when we're talking about environmental stuff. That bill, I've been told, is a real shove it back to the House bill and to try to get them to look at some of this stuff. We're only debating one day a week in the Senate. And so I suspect that we could get out of there relatively easy if we can get to some agreement between the two chambers on the overall budget. They will throw all these bills over the railing because every bill is still alive till next year. So I think we're probably seeing the last week in April, at least, probably, if they can reach an agreement. But one of the biggest fights that I remember when we were in, Democrats were in control of everything for just 4 years,
Yeah.
under Culver is we couldn't get along between our own chambers. And so that's going to be the holdup. And since how we're talking about holdups, God bless the House of Representative team that we have over there, because their debates is drawing the clock out. And that's the only thing the minority party has for power is having the Democrats. Basically, you can't filibuster, but they can drag it out and they make them pay for running a lot of these negative bills and run the clock out. So thank you, Timmy, Bob, Ross, and Dave, for your work over there. I'm so proud of the efforts that you do. I feel guilty when we run through the Senate bills in no time at all and maybe have only a couple hours on some of these bills. But you only get your message out. We're trying to get the message. And Ross talked a lot about trying to work together to try to get stuff done, but at the same time, get the message out. And I saw a chat from Roger that said it's hard to get people to listen. You know, all this stuff is good, but if they're not willing to listen, we're not going to accomplish anything. And that seems to be the extremism has taken over the party. And we don't have Willard Jenkins type guys there, Don Redfern. I mean, they were conservative, but they worked with you, you know, from the black, and even Jim Lynn before I got there. So look, long answer, look for them to fight between themselves. And then I think we're going to get out of there by the last week in April.
Yeah, I personally would like to see a unicameral legislature with 150 people with 6-year terms and a third each every 2 years. There's, you know, but I suspect that bicameralism, you know, came down from Mount Sinai, just like having 100 counties, although one of them died up in Bancroft. But, you know, things can be done differently. And I just like to think outside the box. That's interesting to say when you're on Zoom. But anyway, I'll shut up and
thank you.
And I'll wait for people to decide whether they're going to be served us again. But I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah. What other questions or comments, other things that haven't been shared that you all would like to share? We've got some time.
No, EJ, I think you got your idea of us thinking differently in the way that we have to run government differently is true. I think a lot of things that have happened have forced us to evolve, and we can't be resistant to the forced evolution that's taking place in government in our day to day. You know, we talked about the lack of bipartisan work. I think that our feelings of that are overinflated when it comes to the people, though. When we're taking our trash to the curb, like we do on Thursdays here, we still got to be able to have courage and talk to our neighbor across the street who still may have that dumb MAGA flag flying, right? We still have to be courageous in pulling them back into the fold and having constructive conversations, because without that, we're lost.
Yeah, so, I've got a neighbor that I see on the walk who's got both a Trump flag on his fence and a Gadsden flag on his flagpole, and then his highway patrol car is parked right in his driveway, which I know the other guy that lives down, if you're a judge, you can't do that. But anyway, that's free speech.
Right. So how do we create an environment, you know, EJ, where we're willing to bring those folks back into the fold and have real critical conversation? Because the change that we're all seeking does not come from under the Golden Dome.
Yeah.
We're not going to change the energy that exists amongst people. And so we have to take that challenge on ourselves and be bigger than we've ever been in Outlook before. And I think that's a challenge that Democrats can lead, because we know that our tent is broad. So for us to be able to have diverse conversations with a lot of folks, that's in our wheelhouse. And so we have to lead our state in doing so. We've got to step up and do that. And I think I'm hopeful all my peers here are running again for office. To be transparent with you all, 2022 provides a lot of different unique opportunities when it comes to races across our state, whether it be statewide or congressional. And those are definitely things that I'm going to be exploring myself as we look to see what Iowa leadership looks like. I don't believe that an urban and rural divide, that's not been my lived experience as an Iowan. As a kid from the side of Waterloo, who family farms in Grundy County, all the space in between is what I know to be Iowa. And until we start talking about that as Democrats, I think we're going to find ourselves in this losing perpetual state. But BlackHawk County and the Cedar Valley can lead. And we've read this for our initiatives, our cooperation, our collaboration is a great model for what Iowa needs to look like. And so I know we're all here in this county bold enough to take that challenge. And I think when we step out on that courage, I think we'll find a lot of other folks that follow that direction. And so we have to kind of shoulder that burden, fair or not. Right. My mom always talks about sometimes blessings are burdens, and we got to embrace that and live up to that challenge. And so, you know, that's something that I'm exploring, and I'm hopeful that my peers here are going to continue to carry the mantle and doing the work that they do, because we need examples at the state capitol. And the best ones that I've seen and I've been able to learn from have been the folks that I'm serving with in the General Assembly right here.
Thank you. Very inspiring.
All right, any other last minute questions or all? Comments, contributions?
I just want to say real quick, if you haven't got your COVID vaccination yet, make sure that you get signed up to get that. Starting next week, the nation distribution is 20 million, and then starting April 5th goes to 22 million, which means that here our allocation to Iowa will increase, and our allocation to Blackhawk County will increase. So look for that to happen if people are needing help to get signed up. But it's still just vitally important. And I know that the J&J vaccination is coming, and they, you know, are focusing a lot on those folks for, you know, our large companies and our meatpacking plants. However, there is going to be a portion of those that are going to go to the pharmaceutical company. We found that out just yesterday, that a section of those is going to go to CVS and to Walgreens and Hy-Vee. So if people are wanting that vaccination, those are coming, because I've been working with County Supervisor Chris Schwartz. He has a group of folks that have some compromised immune and some allergy issues, and their physicians would just as soon they go through that once. So one vaccine rather than the two. So that is coming, and that's going to be available soon. So just a quick update, and thank you, everybody. It was great to see everyone tonight.
Thank you.
I just have one comment. Are any of you in the legislature seeing any reaction where people don't believe in getting vaccinations or are discouraging it? I've heard that's become a partisan issue around the country, and I hope it's not in Iowa, but I suspect it probably is.
Timmy, you're on mute. Did you have?
I was just going to say it is, EJ. Unfortunately, it is. We've got, you know, a core group of folks that are anti-vaccination altogether, and they don't want to get this. And, you know, what I tell to everybody is be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And for all of us to move forward and not to be on Zoom calls forever, is we all need to be part of the solution. And the more folks that we can get vaccinated, like our long-term care is a great example. 90% of the residents have gotten their vaccination, only 60% of the staff. So, you know, we've got work to do, but I just kind of keep talking positively about it. I don't, you know, I try to stay away from the politics part of it. It's just, we all just need to join together and be part of the solution for this and move forward. And unfortunately, some people still find that to be a problem for them.
Goodness. All right. I want to thank each and every one of you. I think we had a lot of energy during this conversation, and it's disappointing to me that we didn't gather more people from the community. The environment is so important, and our economy in Iowa is so dependent on agriculture. And I love what the scientists say about there is no planet B. So we really have to work together. And I thank you, all of you that go to Des Moines each week and represent us. It's very heartwarming, the effort you're putting in a very challenging environment.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thanks for putting this together. Talk to you soon.